Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Sports Social.
The Sports Social Podcast Network is delighted to be supporting this year's Sports Podcast Awards, recognising the sporting podcasts that are top of their game. And now it's your turn to lend your support to your favourite sport podcasts. Voting is open now, which means you can get behind your favourite shows and show your appreciation for the hard graft they put in, keeping you entertained and informed on whatever sport it is you follow. There are 21 categories to vote in, including football, tennis, golf, rugby, and loads more. And voting is dead simple. Head to sportspodcastawards.com. Vote now and be part of the action.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Now, before we start our chat, we want you to head over to serieachronicles.com/Patreon and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi membership with a free 7-day trial. Get priority access to every episode and voice note before the rest of the world. Plus, no ads and bonus Patreon-only exclusive episodes and video episodes. Also, be sure to join the new chat community in the Patreon app and chat with fellow subscribers.
Buonanno ragazzi, welcome to another year of Serie A football, another year on the Serie A Chronicles podcast. It's Nikki Bandini welcoming you into 2024, and I have with me for the new year our recently upgraded crew of myself, Mina Azuki, and Patrick Kendrick. Guys, did you have amazing Christmases and New Year's?
Amazing is a stretch. I don't know about you guys, but It was nice. There was at one point on New Year's Eve where it was raining so heavily, I started to contemplate suicide. That might be too much, but
oh my God, Mina.
The weather is just sorry, but it's just I'm starting to get that seasonal
affectiveness disorder
SAD, that you get. Yes,
it's a great acronym.
SAD, and I'm sad because of sad. It's perfect. And I'm watching it. There was a New Year game, which I don't even remember now because I'm starting to lose my memory because this is what happens with old age as well. And I just started to think, like, how could it be raining this much? Yeah, I think it was the Spurs game. No, it wasn't. It was Fulham. Oh, Nikki, that was a hideous game on behalf of your boys. But anyway.
Oh, God.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nikki. It's just one hideous performance after another by Mikel Arteta. But anyway, and so then I was like, yeah, it's been a really nice Merry Christmas because all the family is around. But then New Year's weather kind of ruined it a bit. And then, it's the usual disappointment when it comes to December 31st. But that's all about me. What about you, Patrick?
Well, I actually have a bone to pick with Patrick. I need to cut Patrick off because we need to talk about something.
Ah, yes, let's hear it.
Something very important, which is that Patrick, who was actually just telling us before the show that he had a couple of not such good episodes of luck going back home to England for Christmas. So he went to Naples for Christmas this year. Great choice. He was treating himself at Christmas to some pizza fritta. Again, great choice. But for some reason, he chose to come at tortellini and brodo. For some reason, he thought that he couldn't just enjoy his pizza fritta. He had to come at, I was going to say the best Christmas food, but it's not Christmas food. Have your tortellini and brodo all year round. Have it in the summer, have it in the spring. I don't care, because when you're a true child of Emilia-Romagna, of Bologna, like myself, then you absolutely are having that stuff all year and you're loving it all year.
I think it's sort of like the Ronaldo-Messi debate, although it pains me to try and put, tortellini and brodo in that category. You're not content simply to say Cristiano Ronaldo is the best player of his generation. You then have to denigrate the other one as well to sort of justify your point. So for me, it was like pizza fritta. I mean, it's nailed on as the best Italian, food on Christmas Eve. But as soon as someone came back at me with a rival, then I feel you have to sort of step in and also slate them. So that's why I don't think Tortellini Brodo would have necessarily felt my wrath had it not been for people levelling at me as a possible. Oh no, actually, to be fair, I think we would. Actually, I was the one that led with that offensive, to be honest, wasn't I? I said, I think you can keep your tortellini
You
brodo,
did.
make mine a pizza frita. So I think I must have been discussing it with Northerners in the build up to Christmas, and I was gloating at the fact I was heading south, and that's what I was going to be eating. So I think it was premeditated. So yeah, I hold my hands up, and there you have it. But yeah, the pizza frita was
Nicky, he's
delicious.
right.
And there you see, Mina's just backed me up. So that's 2 against 1, and I think that's a landslide, isn't it? 66%.
Wow, this is outrageous. I would like to be backed up by our listeners. Listeners, hopefully you've had the pleasure in your life to go to Bologna or nearby places and to enjoy proper pasta, and you can all tell Patrick how wrong he is. But in the meantime, we should probably start talking about the football. Juventus Roma, Patrick, this was part of your festive feast, was doing commentary on this game. It was a fascinating setup, I suppose, between the two teams who we know love to win a cortomuso. That might be Max Allegri's phrase, but we certainly know Jose is not afraid of going for those 1-0 results or even 0-0 results some of the time against the big clubs. It was a cagey game. It felt to me like perhaps Roma felt like they were getting the better at the start of the game. But somehow it also felt to me like, yeah, but you knew that in the end, it's Max Allegri and his Juventus team know how to do this better.
Yeah, it felt a little bit inevitable that would be the result as and when Rabiot got the breakthrough. And the biggest thing for Juventus was, I've spoken about it on previous episodes of the pod, scoring early is huge for this team because they actually relish defending a lot more than they actually seem to enjoy pursuing goals in the first place. So I think as and when they've got their goal, particularly against sides which can become quite predictable. And I put Roma into the same bracket as I did Fiorentina when they lost at the Franchi earlier on this season. When you don't seem to have a plan B and you're just getting to the edge of Juventus' box and playing slow sideways passes, it's turgid possession, or you're tossing the ball into the box where Danilo, Bremer and Gatti just thrive on heading the ball clear, then I think you're playing right into Juventus' hands. So to me, it was always a case of if Juventus score, then they will go on and win the game. And that goal came relatively early in the second half. And besides a shot from Brian Cristante, which took a deflection off Vlahovic very early on and caught the outside of the post, Roma never really looked like scoring. Actually, Cristante spoke to Lega Serie A after the game, and he said, I think we produced an excellent performance. I think, the game came down to fine margins. And it just felt like platitudes being trotted out. My response to that is, what game were you watching? Juventus, for the umpteenth time this season, never really looked under threat. They never really looked like conceding. And I'm actually beginning to revise my opinion of them. Before, I was very much in the camp of, this is not sustainable. Winning by 1 goal is not necessarily conducive to a title challenge. But what I now think is actually they defend so well that provided they don't give away easy goals like they did at Frosinone and Genoa, and Allegri was hammering them about that, then I actually think this is quite a good approach for this team, who are relatively limited in terms of the way they play football, but they do have star quality to get goals. And there was a nice cameo for an hour from Kenan Yildiz as well, who really pushed on from what we'd seen at Frosinone. So I think there's enough in this team that makes me think that they can actually go on and push Inter. And I think Inter are getting a little bit frightened. And I think Inter are also very frustrated by the fact that they feel that when they win, they batter teams, and they love hearing this praise. And I think they're congratulating themselves on being the best footballing side and producing the most aesthetically pleasing football. And I think it actually rankles with them and really riles them, the fact that this Juventus side that are quite ordinary are only 2 points behind. But again, Inter have only themselves to blame for that because they couldn't get over the line at Genoa. But I'm thoroughly impressed with what Allegri's doing. I'm thoroughly impressed with what this Juventus team is doing. I think they are really impressive in terms of the sum of their parts. If you look at those individual players, it's not a vintage side by any means, but this was built up to be the whole risultatista. It was the battle of Allegri against Mourinho. The ends justify the means, and the only thing that matters is getting a result. And in the end, Allegri showed that he's still capable of doing that in 2023, now into 2024. And I think it seems to have passed Mourinho by, his ability to get results in one-off games in big matches.
what he said, basically.
Head to serieachronicles.com/Patreon now and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership with a free 7-day trial. Get early access to every full-length episode and voice note before the rest of the world. Plus, all episodes are 100% ad-free. And you get bonus Patreon-only exclusive episodes, video episodes, and behind-the-scenes extras. Also, be sure to join the new chat community in the Patreon app and chat with fellow subscribers.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
This is a really interesting thing because when you look at sort of like the statistics last year, because they kept a lot of clean sheets at one point as well, Juventus, and then if you look at the statistics, it looked like they were really lucky that they were getting away with so much defensively, and that there was going to be a point where they would have to go back to the mean, basically, and realize that they are performing above expectations because of the way that they were defending was not good enough, frankly speaking. Nowadays, when you look at their XG and the way that they're playing and how they are defending, what they're allowing is shots from outside of the box because they think they can pretty much manage that. And everything inside has become so difficult because, of course, they have that mix of physicality and just downright determination at the back. And when you look at the way that they were defending, it was such compact, tight lines, so perfectly clear, like seamless, in the sense 5 at the back, 3 packed in the middle, and everyone was doing their part. And I think that when you look at the way that they're defending now, no, they are not performing above expectations. They are performing to expectations. And I don't see them actually in any way, shape or form falling apart. What worries me as well is that when you watched Inter against Genoa was the performances of some of their players that have always been so important to them, whether that's Turin, and we can talk about that later, but it's also how gassed they look. Like, I mean, Çalhanoğlu looks exhausted. And I think that's something that they are playing more games. I don't know if that's going to be something that will eventually give Allegri the upper hand, or we don't know, because there's obviously the Coppa Italia to come up for Juventus, and that they're going to play, and we'll see what we do. But it's the 20th clean sheet for Juventus in 2023. It's their 12th 1-0 success of the year in 2023. I think that when you have Lukaku, for some reason, when it comes to Lukaku and Juve's defense, whoever's playing at the back, there's a problem there. He seems to always, they know how to shut him out, and they managed to do that. And they couldn't really trigger Dybala in the way that they wanted to either. And I think it's worth mentioning that Rabiot it's bizarre with Rabiot because I don't know what to think of him. I used to think he was the worst midfielder in the world, and now I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. Like, he's been brilliant this year, So not brilliant at all times. I mean, you and I spoke about this, Nikki, when I was praying that someone would come and purchase him, when we were doing our show together on Sky. And I was just looking at him and thinking, this is not to the level. And I firmly believe in a great midfield wins you matches. And I look at this midfield and I'm quite amazed really at how McKennie's performing, because this was a guy that was relegated last season in the Premier League. This was a guy that they were trying to sell deeply. And he's not a brilliant footballer, but I thought that he's always available. He's always looking for a way to just, get back the ball and move it forward. I think there's just so many different performances in that midfield that for me is so subpar and not ever of the quality that I would expect from Juventus. And yet here's the side that's managing to just use its will and its mentality to get further. And the fact is that all Allegri could talk about in his post-match conference is the fact that there's another kid that he wants to introduce called Nonge that he hasn't had an opportunity to launch yet. And I think that tells you everything that you need to know. This isn't a team built on investing well in the market, because the players that, like Pogba that they did try to bring, or Vlahovic, haven't necessarily, well, Pogba hasn't been available and Vlahovic is in and out of the team. But this was a great performance from him. This is a team that's really looking to their squad, to their youth, to make a difference. And they are making a difference. And that is what I think that Allegri constantly gets hassled about. Oh, you don't know how to develop players. Oh, you don't introduce youth. I don't know. I think he knows how to do both of them. And I think that the proof is in the pudding. We just need to see the performances this year. And Yildiz looks like a superstar in the making. I don't even think Juve can keep this guy anymore.
It's a quick response from Mina already straight away after a flash giving up the ghost on keeping hold of a player. Perhaps that relates to all the economic woes that's going to come with the growth decree, which we will also talk about in a little bit. I thought to talk about the sort of tactical part of things, and you mentioned tight lines there, Mina. Actually, I thought one of the things that was interesting in this game is the two teams mirrored each other in theory. You had two teams notionally playing in the same formation, which is 3-5-2, but they didn't really look that much like each other. And actually, to me, that's because Juventus' midfield was much more fluid than Roma's. Juventus' midfield had runners. Juventus' midfield had Rabiot, had McKennie willing to get up and down and connecting with the forwards, and the forwards willing to drop back and take space. That Roma midfield three, they're solid. Paredes, Bove, Cristante, but there was no action from it. There was no up and down. And when Cristante was talking about, oh, this game could have gone either way, look, he hit the woodwork at the beginning of the game, but after that, I'm completely in agreement with Patrick, because it felt like the idea was hold your lines, and it almost felt like that extended the attack. You've just got get the ball to Lukaku and Dybala and hope they do something, which I can see why that would be the formula, because frankly, that formula has worked plenty for Roma this season, but it's not a good enough formula for top level football, for elite level football, I think, in 2023, 2024, I should say now. It was still last year when this game happened. I think that for all the criticism of Allegri's football, some of it, which I think is still justified, I'm not willing to go all the way to this team is suddenly now in this perfect mode just because it wins every game 1-0. But there is a much more natural fluidity and therefore unpredictability, I think, to this Juventus team than there is to Roma, even though they are still a cautious team, perhaps. And I think that's how you get openings like Rabiot running through for that goal, even if it has meant perhaps that you haven't had quite as productive seasons from the centre forwards as Roma's have, where there's so much focus on getting the ball to them.
I think that mostly what I wanted to say in that is that I agree with you. I think what Juventus have is youth. And there was a lot of talk in the summer about how best to use that. And in the beginning, it was a case of let's try to press and harry every opponent in front of us. And that's how they played. You remember in their first few matches, you could see that there was a different way of approaching this. It seems like Allegri then just said, like, let's revert to type. Let's make sure that we have a good defense. But it was clear that what he wanted to do in the first half was to leave the ball to Roma and see what they could do. And, play sort of you take the ball, let's see what you can do. We can get a goal and then just defend. And most importantly, we can introduce Chiesa afterwards. And then Chiesa is a great counter-attacking player as well. And that gives us another hand that if we hadn't scored a goal, then perhaps he can do something by launching something going forward. And it's clear that there's, there's obviously a rotation up front. There isn't really, other than players like Rabiot, for example, and Bremer at the back, that up front, it keeps changing. And we keep seeing different plans, whether it's Yildiz up front, was it Ken, obviously Vlahovic and Chiesa. And there just seems to be this way of trying to use it as much as possible. There isn't a clear plan. There isn't a clear team right now for Juventus, because the midfield is all over the place and the attack is all over the place. Yet everyone understands what they're going to do off the ball, and everyone seems to know what to do on the ball. And I think that's what's impressive. But I don't also think that it's a very beautiful team going forward. I just think it's a very pragmatic and intelligent team. And that is how you sort of know an Allegri side. Like, it's not one that I watch and think, oh, this is champion football. Like I did a show with BBC just before the game. And I said to them, this is a 1-0 victory for Juventus. It's so clear, because this is just what they do. And they're going to know how to do it against a side that doesn't have as much creativity up front.
I essentially agree, and I think that's kind of the point that I was getting at, and I think what seems like all of us thought of it with this Juventus team in this sort of matchup against Roma is there's just more to Juventus than there is to Roma. There's more ideas than there is, even though they might on the surface sometimes look the same. And I suppose then I do want to turn to the opposite side of that coin, which is this not just more grist for the mill of Mourinho is a busted flush? I thought the lack of ideas this Roma team had was really sharp contrast, because they had more of the ball. They had a lot more of the ball. They're not the first team to get it against Juventus, but they didn't really have any great plan for what they were going to do with it.
No plan whatsoever, I think. In the first half, until he tired and came off after an hour, their plan was play the ball to Paulo Dybala, who dropped into the right-hand channel, and ask him to try and do something by bending a ball into the back post and either getting a runner in, and none of the runners ever timed their run correctly, be it Bove or Zalewski, a couple of the kids from the academy, or Lukaku was just absolutely mean as spot on. He has been so ineffectual against Juventus, and it's nothing new. And Bremer seems to thrive against him, and that's not unique to Juventus, by the way. That was my co-commentator for the game, Manuel Pascali, who used to be Kilmarnock captain and centre-back himself. He said exactly the same. He said he remembered every time Inter would play against Torino when Bremer was there, Lukaku would just be completely anonymous, and Bremer nullified him again, and he seems to relish coming up against him. And Bremer, by the way, just take the opportunity, I know this is a point about Roma, but Bremer's second season at Juventus has been absolutely outstanding. That's why he's earned a contract extension. But coming back to Roma, it was very predictable, and Allegri loves predictability, especially when it comes to how to defend. They never got in behind Juventus, who admittedly sat deep, allowed Roma to have the ball. The second half, when the last 20 minutes or so, Juventus put just 2 banks of 5 there and said, break us down, here's the ball. And no one did. Dybala had gone off the pitch by then, and there was just absolutely nothing. They never looked like scoring. The closest they came was a header from Azmoun, which was a really low percentage. Even then, he did well to generate the power he did on it. And Pellegrini came on, and he'd been an impact sub against Napoli, didn't really offer a great deal. I just don't think this Roma side knows exactly what they should be doing. I don't think this Roma side believes a great deal in what their coach is coming up with. I think it's still too much of a reliance on, we're going to have a goal-scoring Lukaku and we're going to have a creative force in Dybala, and between them, they will win us more matches than we'll lose, which is a fine approach when you're playing against 13 or 14 of the teams in Serie A. But we've consistently seen for Roma, Napoli win notwithstanding, that when they come up against the bigger sides, they just don't seem to have a way of breaking them down. They didn't score against Inter. They didn't score against Lazio in the derby. There's just been countless occasions when they just don't ever really look like producing a great deal. Even then, a lot of their numbers have been bolstered elsewhere. You think that their goals for tally is helped by them scoring 7 against Empoli. If you take that 7 off, then you look at their numbers, it's just not great, to be honest. And I don't really know, beyond them playing a through ball to Lukaku or Dybala shooting from outside the box or beating a couple of players, I don't really know what Roma's plan is. I don't watch them and get excited. I don't ever think this is going to be because all of the build-up to this game was Roma won impressively against Napoli. Have they taken the next step? Is this team finally ready to show that they can not only beat the teams they're expected to beat, but also thrive in these 6-pointers and beat their rivals, something they haven't done under previous management. They didn't do it under Paulo Fonseca. Mourinho was brought in to do that. And he just hasn't been able to do that, despite huge investment, despite lots being spent on wage bills. I know people will say they haven't spent a lot in terms of the way they've structured the various deals, but at no stage do I get excited about this team whatsoever. And I think if you can't get excited about them when they're playing against Juventus, which has historically been quite a nice, tasty rivalry for the last 20 years in Serie A, beyond that as well, and the fact that they're on the back of just beating Napoli, then I don't know when you're going to get excited about them, to be honest. And I don't really know how this changes. It all feels very stale.
Unfortunately, it has to be said, after another disappointing result for Napoli at home against Monza this weekend, are we even really still looking at results against Napoli and thinking of them as particularly landmark results in a season for some teams? I mean, Napoli are the champions of Italy, but they're also currently 8th in the table for a reason. They've dropped a lot of games. They have. It's just the reality. But I think unless Mina had something else burning to say on that game, it might be time to get on to the team who are still leading this year's title race, Inter, and then we can talk about the race between them and Juventus, because Inter did drop points this weekend against Genoa, went 1-0 up with Genoa before Dragushin scored the equaliser. And because this is January, we got an almost instantaneous report linking Dragushin with Tottenham Hotspur. I thought that's amazing how quickly these things happen in the January transfer window. I don't actually know if those two things are related, but I did think it was very sort of, without being too sweeping with my brush, very Premier League timing that a player scores an important goal against a big team in another league and then immediately, look, he's being linked to a Premier League club. Mina, I know you had your eye on this game and perhaps weren't so impressed with the league leaders, sorry.
Just a point on Dragusin, just because I do follow him, because I'm very disappointed that he's not playing for Juventus. They have been tracking him for a while now, to be honest with you. I think that people just love seeing him score a big goal and then further exacerbating all the rumours. But Tottenham have had their eye on him for a while because Paratici knows him so well, and he's working as a consultant right now because he doesn't have a full-time job because of obviously what happened. When it came to Inter and Genoa, become a member at patreon.com/Serie A Chronicles for regular bonus episodes and content.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.